Alrighty, what's up, gamers? We're back again with another Moonkin Monthly, and this month we are here to talk about Ny'alotha, corruption, and kind of a shift in minor essences with the Unbound Force actually being not shit. So, let's just go ahead and quickly get into it. But before we do that, I gotta thank my Patreons. So we gotta thank Alpines, Anjua, Arui, Nevernude, Gesu, H3, Krona, Lashy, Lunor, Mordia, Mr. Sliggy, Pixel, Sero, Solana, Starzy, Tiggs, and Alavigia. So, thanks to all those guys. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the support. So first off, we're going to talk about Ny'alotha as an instance. Overall, Moonkin, I would say on the stronger end of Ny'alotha, definitely stronger than I initially thought. I thought that Moonkin was going to fare well in terms of just how our damage profile worked for a lot of the bosses. Kind of concerned about the last couple bosses, still kind of concerned about the last couple bosses, but I do feel like we definitely have our place on those fights. Specifically more like Carapace, but we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So, we're going to talk about Wrathion. So, we can start off with Wrathion, and basically, single target encounter. He's like a starting boss of the... He's the first boss of the instance. Fairly common stuff. By the way, this is the Wildhead guide that I maintain. I'm just going to be using this as like the background just so you guys can see about just some of the stuff if you have any questions about what talents people are running and stuff, other stuff like that. But we're just going to talk about general stuff about the fight. So the most important thing most important tip that I would have for Wrathion for you guys is to probably talent Stellar Drift. And that is just for the crackling shard damage. If you're just going for Wrathion damage and if you're trying to like burn him before extra intermissions, then maybe going Stellar Flare would be in your best interest. But Stellar Drift makes Moonkin, and the use of Starfall, however memey it is, actually makes Moonkin one of the better choices for killing the spike damage. So that is actually a really nice thing. Nothing else super out of the ordinary for this fight. Just in general, like major essences, minor essences. We can actually talk about those. For by and large, most of the instance, you're going to be running Vision of Perfection Major, and then Breath of the Dying Minor or Unbound Force Minor, and then Essence of the Focusing Iris and Conflict and Strife Minor. So Essence of the Focusing Iris and Conflict and Strife are probably set in stone minors just because of how powerful they are. There's other stuff like Purification Protocol, but that's a little bit more fight dependent. We can talk about that in a little bit as we get to some of those fights. Breath of the Dying versus Unbound Force is a little bit of a unique situation. Breath of the Dying, that should be taken whenever you are trying to hit like a corruption breakpoint, whenever Breath of the Dying is not at rank 3. If Breath of the Dying is at rank 3, then you should probably be playing it full time, but if it's not, then a little bit different. Unbound Force comes in handy whenever Breath of the Dying is not rank 3 and you already have like an okay corruption budget to where you don't have to play this Breath of the Dying minor trait to get that 10 corruption reduction that you do get from it. And the way you actually play Unbound Force is you pool up Astral Power. Like, you start pooling Astral Power once you get 19 stacks on the Unbound Force, and then you just spam Star Surge, and you don't care about empowerments at all. You do care about streaking procs, but not empowerments. You just spam Star Surge as many times as possible. I actually created a weak aura for Unbound Force, like the Reckless Force minor. You can grab that in my Discord. It's in the Boomy Stuff channel. Basically, it starts glowing whenever you get up to 19 stacks, and then it does like a chomp sound whenever you hit 20, just to try to keep you engaged with whenever you're getting those stacks. Because Unbound Force is okay if you're not playing around it, but if you are playing around it, then it turns into one of our best minors. So that is that. And again, like I said, only play that whenever you don't need Breath of the Dying, which a lot of people don't need Breath of the Dying currently because you don't have enough choices of corruption items to be able to even like get a good corruption budget. So it's very hard for you to even need that. Next we have Maut. And Maut, the only thing that I really have is make sure that you're actually bark scanning during the Obsidian Shell cast. Beyond that, it's undetermined if Stellar Flare or Twin Moons is better. I'm leaning towards Stellar Flare, but you can honestly play either one. Reason for that being is because the ad dying is like the ads don't spawn frequently enough to where the multi-dot value is that important. A lot of the heroic and normal strategies just involve you bombing the add into the boss. I don't know if that's going to continue on Mythic or not. I think Stellar Flare is slightly better of an essence here, especially just with the frequency in which you actually have a second add. I don't think there's anything that's like too out of the ordinary on Maut beyond that. So Prophet Skitra, Mass Root, really fucking important for the wall on this fight. I definitely need to change my guide to reflect that mass entangle is what you're looking for. The wall, especially in Mythic, the making sure that the wall stays rooted the whole entire time is going to be pivotal. Beyond that, you can play Renewal if you like. It's actually a pretty solid option on this encounter. There's not a ton of movement that is actually required here overall. So Renewal is a fairly solid option. I'm not convinced on the Stellar Flare versus Twin Moons thing on this fight either. I think that there is a time and a place for both of them. I think in general I would probably recommend Stellar Flare over Twin Moons just for this encounter, and I'm probably going to change this this fight by fight thing to reflect that on the Wowhead guide. Alright, so next we got Zanesh, also known as the soccer boss. My only notes for this is wild charge around to mitigate movement, don't play soccer. Single target encounter, nothing really to it. On Mythic, you actually do get adds that spawn, and they do like a 3-second cast, and if the cast is completed, then they fear the whole entire raid. The adds don't have a ton of health, though, so you can like nuke them down pretty quickly. Not really good value for Twin Moons, though. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Then we have Vexiona. I'm still unsure as to this fight. I think Moonkin may be actually just terrible on this fight, and I may just be super stupid. I think you definitely play Shooting Stars over Fury of Elune, just because of how the adds are. And then I think you just hit the boss the whole entire time, or the priority target. Beyond that, oh yeah, you can actually dot the boss while it passes overhead, whenever it's doing that thing that it's like spraying stuff onto the ground. So you can recast your dots on the boss whenever it's doing that for higher priority damage. I think in general your job on this encounter is not to kill ads, just to hit the fucking boss the whole entire time. All right, we got Hivemind, which is a very interesting encounter. You see, I have a lot of major and minor essences listed here because this fight is so fucking weird and you can play it a bunch of different ways. I even have like Soul of the Forest and Stellar Drift listed because you can, again, play this fight so many different ways. But I'm pretty sure you actually just hit the boss and single target down the darters. It is important work, even if it's not like the highest DPS. It's definitely not the highest DPS choice for you to be able to do that. And then making sure that you just like knock the darter adds in with Typhoon. That's also fairly nice as well. I would recommend playing Vision of Perfection Major with Purification Protocol Minor. I would definitely play Purification Protocol Minor like 100% of the time. Then you could probably play like Conflict and Strife and Unbound Force Minor. These are all good, like decent AoE options. I don't think I'd play Iris Minor because I think it gets reset pretty easily off the 10 stack. So I would play more single target, or not single target, but like 2-target cleave, hitting both of the bosses, and then just like single targeting down the darters whenever they spawn. That's about how I feel about that. If you're actually trying to play for AoE damage and you need more AoE damage, potentially Feral? Potentially Feral? I don't know. It's hard to say. AoE, Feral actually has decent AoE. If you don't know how to play Feral, though, it's probably not that great. But Feral's actually pretty solid. So, Ra-den. Make sure that you turn and hit the priority target orb, having 45-yard range. You should absolutely abuse having the 45 yards. These adds, especially important on Mythic. Like, not only just the orb, but the adds themselves. Make sure that you use Bark Skin wherever the adds are summoned as well. That's also super nice. I don't think I'd play Renewal here, although Renewal would actually be decent. Probably not for Mythic. Actually, Renewal would be trapped for Mythic, because if you hit 100% health at some point, like if you have like a debuff on you, then you can instantly die. So maybe not Renewal. Twin Moons versus Stellar Flare here. Twin Moons is absolutely going to be better for Mythic. Stellar Flare may be slightly better for Heroic, but Twin Moons is 100% better for Mythic because you actually do get extra adds that you have to kill. Shad'har. Patchwork fight. Maybe you play Renewal. On Mythic, you actually get rooted by Miasma, like the blob that chases you down, you actually get rooted by it. So making sure that you are spread out from your entire group is important. But I don't know. Single target patchwork fight. Maybe you play renewal here. There's nothing really beyond like to it as much. Whew, Drest'agath. Oh god, I hate this fight. So Drest'agath, I guess you just multi-dot the whole entire time and priority down one tentacle, whichever tentacle is like determined by your group. Balancer is probably the best class in the game to get the buff whenever the cooldowns are up, just because of how we're still doing some multi-dot damage, but we have high single target damage. Plus, upside, we make really good use of the 30-second duration on the buff. So say you proc Vision of Perfection and you're playing Star-Lord, say you get a Vision proc, and then you can actually bomb during that 30-second window straight into the boss. So that is very good use of the full 30 seconds. So that is super important. Solar Beam, you should Solar Beam the Mind Flay cast. I don't think it silences, but it does lock out for 6 seconds. Solar Beam is one of the longest lockouts in the game. So that's fairly important on Drest'agath as well. Il'gynoth. Pull Astral Power for the Mind Control. Balancer is probably one of the best classes at dealing with the Mind Control. You can 2-tap people with Star Surge out of the MC, but just with double Star Surge if they both crit. That's useful. Beyond that, this fight gets kind of weird on Mythic. There's like an extra ad and a bunch of other shit. Even more solidifying the fact that Twin Moons should be taken over Stellar Flare. On Heroic, there's probably some... Like, you could argue that Stellar Flare may be useful on Heroic Il'gynoth, but for Mythic Il'gynoth, almost certainly Twin Moons seems like the absolute play. Carapace and N'Zoth. This is really funny, because I have been playing Purification Protocol Major on Carapace and N'Zoth. Okay, so if you're going for the parse, Purification Protocol Major, and then you play Stellar Drift, and then you also play Fury of Elune. Purification Protocol and Fury of Elune actually line up for every ad spawn set in the last phase, and that allows you to do the maximum amount of damage, and then if you want, you can also use your staff during the ad spawn. That is by far the best for your DPS. Probably not the best way to do the fight, and I would almost argue that is trolling, but it's probably not the best way to doing the fight. I have been playing it, but I'm also just kind of fucking around. I think playing Vision of Perfection Major and then like Purification Protocol Minor, Conflict Minor, then Unbound Force Minor, and just kind of doing some shitty AoE, but then like focusing down the boss the whole entire time is probably your best bet for how to actually play the fight. I don't think like trolling and like playing full AoE is the move. For N'Zoth, I don't know. I guess the best way of playing out N'Zoth is definitely this like Twin Moons build. Definitely helps with the killing of the tentacles in the second phase. The way that you do the maximum damage on this fight, though, is definitely faunting and like popping your cooldowns whenever Psychus reaches 5 stacks and just like blowing his ass up. And then I'm still undetermined if it's like padding or effective damage. Like I did 70k DPS in our most recent N'Zoth kill, and it's basically just an insane amount of damage to Psychus. Like, let me pull it up. It's basically just like a ridiculous amount of damage to Psychus because I was using my cooldowns on him whenever we were supposed to, just to be able to push us out of the phase as quickly as possible. I can't tell if it's like padding or effective damage. I guess it just kind of depends on what cooldowns you have allocated to it. But full font and full cooldowns into Psychus, fairly strong. Look at this fucking spike, just in damage. You just like hit the fattest Star Surge crits on it, and if you get the Unbound Force proc too, that's a nut right there. Yeah. But beyond that, I don't really have too much else to say about Ny'alotha. If you're looking for like super talent specific stuff, you can actually always go and check out this Wowhead guide. It gives a bit of an in-depth analysis of what talents, what essences you should be looking to take. Those are always going to be kind of important. I need to change Skitra. I think that's the only one that I noticed that had like some questionable shit written for talents, but beyond that, everything else should be good to go. This is by far the most updated version of this. Next thing we got to talk about, the great corruption apocalypse that we have going on. So they made Gushing Moon, Infinite Stars, and Twisted Appendage all scale off item level, whereas shit like Echoing Void and Expedient and all the other stuff, Twilight Devastation, are still scaling off like percentage HP. Some of the like Expedient gives like flat percentage haste gain from all sources, so those are not scaling off item level. But the rest of the stuff is, and this is a good representation of what everything should look like, whether or not you should be wearing. Like this is corruption per point at 445, 416, 475 item level. So those are just really good metrics for you guys to be looking at as to what you should be looking to play. Yeah, basically, unfortunately enough, corruption is not in your hands. Like, you don't have any options as to what corruption pieces you're getting, especially super early on in the tier. And the reason that is the case is just because of how just infrequent the drop rate is. It's so weird to me. So basically, on the PTR, you would get like a corruption piece every 2 dungeons. And on live, I swear to God, you get like 1 corruption piece for your group per like 10 dungeons. And it's just in this insanely low drop rate. So the only thing that's worth doing even is raid and world quests. But I think they nerfed the drop rate from world quests as well. So even that is not a great way for you to be able to get your most optimal corruption traits. So you're just, first off, you have to pray to God that you get a high item level like Gushing Wound, Infinite Stars, Echoing Void piece. Then you have to hope that it's tier 3. Then you have to hope to God that you actually get the piece too. So it's like Wheel of RNG, Wheel of RNG, Wheel of RNG, and it's just compounding into making this patch feel like it's super shit. Like, I feel like once you have like a full fucking bag full of just like random ass corruption, and you're able to like mix and match, and you're able to go and you're like, all right guys, so we're in Mythic Plus currently. Twilight Devastation, pretty shit on single target, but it actually fits itself on AoE pretty well. Let me throw on a tier 3 Twilight Devastation. All right, with all of my K production from corruption sources, I actually have 25 more corruption that I can allocate. So let me put on 1 Expedient and 1 Gushing Wound, and then we're going to roll with that. So that will be how you're going to be budgeting in the future, but as it currently stands, you just kind of wear what you got, and it feels like shit. What else do I have to say? Oh yes, I needed to talk about what corruption level you should go to. So I know that I previously have discussed corruption level, and I thought that maybe you could get away with going over 40 as a balanced druid. I redact that statement. Going over 40 is trap. Mega trap. And if you get hit from the thing, if you hit by the thing from beyond, the odds of you dying are so goddamn high. Like, sure, and you can also like, sure, you can root it with like mass root and stuff like that, but I have times where I'll have 3 of them spawn, and I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I die here. But I definitely would advise never going over 40 after resists. It is so goddamn troll. It is insane. Maybe you're able to get away with it in like low level content, like 6s or something. But for any like relevant progression stuff or pushing keys or anything else, it's trap. Let's think. What else was there? Oh yes, Thing from Beyond also pulls mobs out of combat, which again is another reason that it's not great. So if you're playing a Mythic Plus and you got enough corruption to get that, if it spawns and it's near a trash pack, it can pull the trash pack. Same with like procs of Twilight Devastation as well. That can also pull stuff that's out of combat with you. So that is also pretty scary. But beyond that, I think that's going to be it for me today. So I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks with the Race to World First. If you guys haven't seen, I am casting the complexity limit Race to World First coverage for them. That's down in Texas. That will be super fun. I'm going to be streaming all of my own progression while at the same time casting, while at the same time doing school shit. So I'm going to be super busy, maybe slow on the YouTube videos for a couple days, but then I'll be able to crank out some like boss kills and boss guide style videos like I normally do, and then eventually get tired of making them towards like the 7th or the 8th boss in the instance, and I'm like, maybe not, and then just get bored of it. But I always do start off strong, but it does taper off towards the end. Beyond that, make sure you're checking out all my stuff in the description. I'm going to be linking that Wowhead guy that I was looking at too. If you need like any source for boss like questions, you can always DM me. also reference that for stuff like Essences and Azurite and whatever. Actually, not Azurite. You're fucking always playing triple streaking, one Arcanic Pulsar. I don't know what I'm talking about. Beyond that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys later. Peace.